We're checking in again with State Representative Tacky Cheyenne of Quincy on this last day of September for Tacky Talk. Hey, Tacky, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Joe. It's about 11:10 in the morning, so we're still in the morning. And yeah, we seem to like to time ourselves either very close to the end of the month or very early in the beginning of a month.
Seems to work out that way. Yeah, I don't know where September went. It just seemed I thought it was just Labor Day the other day.
It did blink. I mean, it feels like we were just discussing our vacations in August not that long ago. And it feels like our vacations are so far, 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 far away than it was before. So, okay, the whole Boston came out just that moment. I just knew
That
that
was classic right there. Yes.
far, far, far away. But let's try to damper the accent a little right now. So yeah, no, it's been a really rapid month. Obviously, we've talked about the weather a lot because of the nature of when we make sure you know this is a live show. And yeah, I mean, Halloween stuff. I've seen Halloween decorations going up in the neighborhoods already. I think people just take advantage of the good weather to get the decorations up rather than wait for like 2 weeks out when the weather may be poor.
Yes, I'm surprised they have made Christmas decorations already.
Well, it seems like August is when they start selling Halloween candy. So I mean, it's seasonal purchases are much more extended, and of course, it's an election cycle in Quincy, and lawn signs are up in force this past weekend. Yeah, I'm a sad person. I drive around looking for lawn signs just to see how things are going, and yeah, there's a lot of them just made an appearance this past weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. November 4th, so it'll be here before you know it for sure. All the city councilors and three school committee seats are up for election this year.
And remind folks that October 25th is the first day of early voting, which City Hall will let people know when that's happening. It's also the last day to register to vote. So if you're not registered to vote yet, you have up to October 25th to vote for the November 4th election. And you can still get a mail-in ballot. The applications are available online or call the city clerk's office and to get your mail-in ballot. And the ballot should be available probably in next week or so.
I would think so. City clerk said she's sending them out to get printed very soon. So yeah, that would be a quick turnaround for that.
And if you're concerned about the U.S. Post Office not getting there on time, obviously you can drop these ballots at City Hall at any time before Election Day. And for the people who may be taking a winter vacation, I guess, in November, this is obviously a very convenient way for people to get their vote in before they get traveling to their summer homes.
Yes,
I say winter homes, winter homes,
winter homes. That's right.
winter homes in summer weather.
Yeah, probably in Florida or southern climes for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing about mail-in ballots is that if you want to get a head start to get to your winter home, you can get your vote done in early October.
Yep. And there's a drop box right outside City Hall too, if you don't want to go inside or if they're closed or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little reminder for folks that you got about a little less than a month to register to vote and a little less than a month to early voting in person. But once again, remind everyone you can get mail-in ballot applications online or just call over to the city clerk's office.
Absolutely. So now that we've got the city news out of the way, what's going on at the State House?
And not too much. Public hearings are still very active. I got actually a public hearing first thing tomorrow morning at the State House to get through my committee with 3 hearings set up in the month of October. I'm trying to avoid November, December hearings, and under the House's 60, 90-day rule on reporting bills out, there'll be a lot of essentially getting votes from members towards the end of October. So I'm in a mad rush here to try to crunch out the remaining bills I have and start making determinations. Things would take more time for the committee to digest. So October is a very big decision-making month for me in terms of trying to figure this out, talk to the committee members, get the staff ready to go on these bills. And since we do not need the Senate's approval regarding releasing bills, it's not longer a joint committee except in a very narrow set of circumstances to vote on bills. It's very unilateral right now between the two branches on committee level, which is a systematic change from the past 90 plus years. So, I've always been living under this system my entire adult life, and this is upended. So it's a little bit of stress from my part because I'm in such uncharted waters on committee management as a veteran committee chair and also a veteran committee staffer. And we got to get ready for November because our recess, well, it's not really a recess, but our end of formal sessions is the third Wednesday in November, right before Thanksgiving. And we don't know exactly what the crunch is. I know the House and Senate Ways and Means chairs, plus the Secretary of Administration and Finance, is doing a listening session at 1 o'clock today regarding the impacts on the federal shutdown, but also the impacts on the big, beautiful bill that they did in DC that will have enormous impact regarding social services here in Massachusetts, as well as federal reimbursements. And the regulations have been issued, and it's still very confusing what's going on. For example, you may have seen that the IRS has finally put out a tax on tips regulations, which is not that straightforward how it works. And they made changes to your 401k, 457s, and your Roth contribution levels, and the fact that certain circumstances may require you to stop contributing to 401ks and put your money into Roth IRAs under certain circumstances. So, IRS has also issued a lot of these things that will impact you, actually. And, I strongly advise that you probably should be seeing your financial advisor and your consultant regarding your 2026 retirement contributions. There's a lot of things going on in DC, and I think the misconception is that it doesn't affect you. It does. It's just that everybody's affected differently. That's the way I like to put it. So, we're still waiting for it. And, as you may be aware, the fiscal year for the federal government starts on October 1. And obviously, there's going to be a federal shutdown.
It looks very likely, actually. First time in a long time. It doesn't seem that there's an imminent deal. We're speaking on the eve of the potential shutdown. And I know that what can the state do and to intervene, Jackie?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there is a lot I can do about this, and the federal delegation has to make its decision with their House and Senate leadership teams in DC about what the strategy is. As I think everyone may remember, this is not a new experience for us. We've had threats of government shutdowns for decades, and I believe the last government shutdown may have been 2011.
Something like that. Actually, I think it was
2013.
Yeah, I think it was in Trump's first term, actually.
Was it? Yeah, I thought we avoided that one. But regardless, it's not the first time we've done this. We've done it in the Obama administration. We've seen it during the Clinton administration. It's unusual. Generally, those shutdowns are less than 7 days most times, and generally less than 2 weeks. So what does it mean? It means that certain non-essential government services at the federal level will be closed, and then the staff are essentially temporarily not getting paid until it's resolved. Certain offices like Congress, the White House, judiciary, law enforcement will continue, the Army, Navy, military service will continue to function. The difficulty of this one, I've read in the news, is that it's very unclear, even among the media, exactly how much the government is shutting down. Because unlike past resolutions, this one's a very big one. It's covering the vast majority of government. It isn't like a continuing resolution for very targeted services in the Fed. So, for example, they do defense continuing resolutions in the past, and that is why the military should not be closed down at all because it's a separate continuing resolution. So this one's pretty much more expansive and deals with much more non-central services. However, unless you need that service, it is essential for you.
That's right. Yeah, I think I read where Social Security payments will continue, Medicare will continue, but things like, well, here in Quincy, the Adams National Historical Park will probably have to close.
Yes, and you may get a delay in your passport services, for example.
Right.
Foreign nationals are seeking to get a delay of the visa, right? You may find yourself in need for certain types of document verifications. Certain parts of the IRS was already been gutted. They already gutted. I love the fact Republicans like to gut the IRS, which their job is actually to make sure that people pay their fair share. But let's put that issue aside. Certain services that you're looking for customer service may not be available. This impacts us too, because we, get constituent services that refer to the federal delegation, and federal delegation, goes to the federal government on your behalf to get questions answered, the same way that we try to get answers from the state government. So, like I said, I don't pretend to know every single federal services. The media covers the big one. But if you're a person that needs federal assistance, and it's a non-essential service. And like I said, it's an essential service to you because you need it now. So if it goes on more than 2 weeks, I think there'll be more impact on all of us because a lot of federal payments will also be suspended, whether it be
Mhm.
reimbursements to the state or not-for-profit agency or tax credits to a private company. I think there'd be more apparent impact as it goes along. And given the fact that the federal government is now rehiring people at the end of their furlough, well, not furlough, what do you call it, buyout, because September is the buyout and the buyouts for a lot of federal employees. So you may remember at the beginning of the year when they're doing shrinking the federal government, they gave buyouts to September for a
Mhm.
bunch of folks.
Yeah, the whole Doge house cleaning issue. Yeah,
Yeah, and they those guys can't take unemployment until their buyout is done.
right.
Just the month of September. So there should be more unemployment applications coming in as their federal package ends. And there's been some rehires. The federal government, it's questionably smaller, but I mean, more accurately, it's affecting people's services. And we'll see, what the size of the service impact as a result of the shutdown looming 12 a.m. tonight.
Well, I mean, less people working means people spending less money, right? And that impacts the overall economy.
Well, yeah, obviously, if you're not getting paid, you don't know when you're going to get paid next. You already tighten your belt. You're going to tighten to the next level,
Right.
and depending on the vendor, for example, they're not paying vendors, and we know the federal government is a major contractor. The vendors may suspend work
Mm.
or do furloughs temporarily, or decide not to expand spending. I was talking to friends about, for example, the SNAP program. And we talk about this too, about the fact that certain federal programs like SNAP, Social Security, another similar type assistance, has an economic impact because that's people spending money locally uh, through a service program. Same thing happens with contractors and vendors.
Mhm.
They'll spend locally on federal dollars pursuant to a contract, and those contracts payments are suspended. It's going to delay them purchasing local product.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess some travel maybe not canceled but delayed due to some slowdowns at the federal level too.
Well, there's a workforce shortage at the airline traffic controllers. I mean, this is very obvious to everybody now. I mean, the Newark one obviously got a lot of news, but air traffic safety seems to be definitely impacted by people retiring and then can't get people to work for them and lack of faith in the government. One of the things I think is going to happen more and more, and we've seen this with the MBTA, is that bad reputation will lead to people not to work for that organization. So, for example, if you're applying for a job and organization A has a whole lot of bad news that you find problematic in terms of your future career, you're not inclined to apply for the job in company A. The MBTA has had that problem because of a lot of bad news associated with it, and people aren't inclined to want to work for an organization that may have a negative view in your future career. The way the federal government's going at the moment, and given the political divide and quite frankly the visceral nature of politics, it may actually impact people's career decisions, even though it's not a political position in the sense that you're not working in Congress, you're not working directly inside the White House, but you want to be just a worker in the federal government, in an impartial way, in the sense that you just want to get your job done. You're not here making political statements.
Right.
Um, you could find yourself like, well, I'll take my talent somewhere else.
Right. Exactly. Why put up with the politics when they don't have to?
Exactly, and everyone makes an individual decision. And given the social media today, as well as people's public commentary, whether right or wrong, it's up to you to decide that. Can affect your choice in political, not political career, in your professional career,
Mhm.
So, often it's not look poorly that if you work for a federal agency, particularly one where you have a lot of responsibility, and decide to transfer those skills to the private sector. But if they look at when you worked, the number of years, people can figure out what administration you're in, and this could, have a chilling effect on new hires.
Mhm.
Given the fact the job market is still leaning towards employees over employers, you may find good skilled labor, deciding they don't want to do public service and make money doing something else with a bit more money in the private sector. And this
Yeah.
this will become more apparent over time. This isn't an instant situation. You could see this problem evolving over the course of several years. The MBTA did not net automatically have a workforce hiring problem strictly because of bad news happening over 1 year.
Right.
So we'll see. A lot of stuff is wait to see. Maybe I'm completely wrong in 3 years, or maybe I'm right. I don't know. But it's just an observation of things, particularly in a situation where it's a low unemployment rate and it's still leaning towards employees be able to dictate some terms in terms of hires.
Yeah, I'm wondering, for unionized federal employees, how this will impact them if the unions take precedence over this.
Well, the federal government has decided that they can just cancel union contracts at will without any kind of following through on the contract, nor receiving a court order. And this is something that's actually gotten under the radar, is that the Trump administration decided just to simply cancel contracts. End of story. No, dead stop. So as we say before, you can't trust somebody to come through on their side of the contract. Why would you do business with them? In the case of unions, he's just simply canceling contracts and forcing the unions to sue for enforcement,
which takes time. Yeah,
which takes time. And I don't know what you guys, but I'm old fashioned on this stuff. A deal is a deal, and we have a problem on compliance in the deal. Let's discuss how we can make that work. But things like collective bargaining contracts, paying vendors, things like that. The deal is the deal. And there's huge negative repercussions on non following through on your side of it. This was not getting a lot of news. It's on the low.
First I've heard of that, actually.
Yeah, very low end of the media radar. They're not really paying attention to this end of it. And I think somebody in the news media needs to start looking at the vendor contracts and whether or not, obviously Doge did lie. I mean, they started counting, terminated the contracts from this past December because the contracts ended. That is not a cost saving, folks. That's something that is not a new cost saving. It's the natural course of contracts ending.
Right.
I mean, they did kind of flub a bunch of numbers on their savings, but again, they do this in the private sector. Government's more transparent. So, it's the media can quickly figure this out. It's not like it's that hard to do the math. But, what I'm getting at is that at some point, they're going to just simply do cost savings by not paying vendors to the federal government. And that's not a good way to do business.
No, because what company wants a federal contract that may not pan out?
Yeah, federal contracts, whether it be paying leases on property or getting paper. Generally the credit of the federal government is good. They're not maybe paying on time all the time, but the credit is good. And that's why these contracts are lucrative, because they're going to pay. I'm going to tell you, at some point, they're going to try to slide under the radar like they did with the contracts with federal employee unions. They're going to probably start, and they haven't already started, delaying contracts. And given the government shutdown, they may use an excuse for a lot longer delay on payment.
Right. Would a federal shutdown impact Massachusetts unemployment?
No, not at the moment. I mean, the federal, as a reminder, when certain programs that the federal government's have is actually run by the state government, and it's paid for by the federal government. So unemployment is a federal program that the state operates, but it's federally paid for. And we have talked to unemployment in the past, and over the years, the federal government has cut back on their reimbursements as well as funding for employees to work at unemployment, DUA. So obviously, we're now facing a higher intake on DUA calls. I mean, my office, I just picked up 2 new ones before I even got on a call with you on my email just today. And obviously we're a small district. It's only about 47,000 people, but you think about the ratio. Once you get to like a couple of dozen in a week, there's an employment problem. In Massachusetts, unemployment is at 4.8%.
Right. So,
if there's no more funding from the feds regarding DUA or mass health on people to do the work, it's obviously incumbent in the state to pick up that cost. But the problem is, as a federal program, why is state tax dollars paying for a federal program? And this is where we get into a bit of a commingling issue, or segregation commingling. Like, we try to keep the federal dollars segregated. We don't try. We have to keep it segregated. Let's not try. We must keep it segregated from the state dollars, and try to I don't know how this is going to play out in the long term,
Yeah, it
frankly.
would, yeah, be up to the state, I guess, to seek reimbursement at some point.
Well, exactly it. I mean, your tax dollars actually are segregated out based on the services. So your federal dollars go to federal programs that the state operates, but the employees are paid by federal dollars. I mean, think about it, it makes perfect sense,
Hmm.
right? And at the same time, we do administer certain types of federal grants. Domestic violence grants is one of them. I can
Hmm.
and the funnel through Mass Domestic Violence Agency, Office of Domestic Violence, and they go to the local service agencies from there. So we do stuff on behalf of the federal government, expect some reimbursements on our administrative cost. So we shall see how this works. It's a little different because like we don't mandate cities and towns to do work that's a state job. We pay for it.
Yeah.
But if you go to like a county, for example, large swath of this country actually has more powerful county government than state government because the
Yes.
county government runs those service programs. And
I'm thinking California is a good example. Yeah.
Florida is a good
Yeah.
example. Everywhere in the Southwest is a good example. And those county governments, get the federal reimbursements, but those county governments also tax county tax. It's one of those quirky things about taxation is that when you look at national studies, they ignore county taxes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I always find it very interesting where they say that you're in a low tax state, yeah, on income tax, but they're disingenuous because there's county tax and fees.
Okay.
So it's always amazing how I look at these like different federal national groups writing about tax policy and they completely blow off that. And the only reason I can think of it is they come from states where there is no functional county government.
Like Massachusetts, basically. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, strong state governments.
Yeah. Huh.
But
Interesting. Although
kind of
Norfolk County is still pretty strong.
it is. It is not a tax. They do not tax you.
Correct.
They
Right.
make most of the money on fees. For example, the President's Golf Course, it's fee
Mhm.
and they do receive some support with state tax dollars.
Yep. Yep. Filing fees at the Registry of Deeds, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the fees will go up once every 15 or so years.
I think the last time Mitt Romney raised them, that was the last time. That shows you how long ago it was.
Yeah, it takes a long time to raise a fee. People complain it's too much money, but keep in mind those fees don't move for long periods, which creates a fixed income problem for counties.
Yes, because their costs increase. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And for example, like Billy O'Donnell there at the Registry of Deeds, don't get more money if there's no real estate transactions.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's all connected. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, so the economy on property purchases has a direct impact regarding the revenue stream for county government.
Hmm. Well, I guess if there is a shutdown, federal shutdown, it'll give us some idea as to how the federal cuts may impact the state because there'll be no money coming in.
That's entirely possible. I wish I had a better answer for you. Like I said, we are both old enough to have lived through more than one government shutdown.
Hmm.
This one in particular is actually quite long. And if you want to talk about the politics a little bit, we can. I mean, I think it's been very well reported in news that the Democrats chickened out, for lack of a better term, on shutting the government down back in the early part of this year, in the March area. And Schumer made the leader Schumer said that the reason you want to do is because he feared that, give a open game for the federal government to continue its Doge cuts.
Right.
Well, the argument doesn't change 6 months later or so. It's the same problem, but I mean, it would have been before the end of the fiscal year. And a lot of the big fiscal changes that the Republican Congress and the president made by law, including the revisions they've done, meaning pass a bill and repeal their own budgetary sets, goes into effect on October 1st. So there's a whole lot of more chaos in this front than it would have done at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
On administrative regulatory level and beyond just the spending issue. So obviously, as you guys know, this we do politics in the show, and the Democratic base, not necessarily Massachusetts, but in other parts of the country in particular, feel that they aren't using every leverage they can to do it, and the Democratic Party needs to make a decision. And you've seen this before when it was flipped. We had a Democratic president, the same thing happened going the other way. Oddly enough, with identical rhetoric, you see it in news now. It's like the same playbook 35 years later.
Exactly. Yeah.
This exact same thing that was going on during Bill Clinton. They all said the same things. Nothing ever changes. It's just different people saying words.
It's very true. It's the same old argument. It's just different players.
Yeah, and we talked last week that state government here put some money into acute care hospitals and community health centers, preparing for the Medicaid cuts and the cuts to community health centers from the federal government.
Hmm.
So obviously, as you've seen in the news, the Democrats decided to double down on healthcare as trying to get concessions to restore those cuts. So
Right.
it could save taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in Massachusetts and potentially, perhaps even bigger numbers in bigger states where you could be facing, maybe $1 billion in some of these states if you're a big state on Medicaid cuts. So, the Democratic position right now is that as opposed to try to restore all the social programs that are likely to have some kind of reduction or change. They're trying to hyper focus in on something that actually affects your pocketbook a little more, not necessarily as a patient, because it will affect you as a patient, but also the state tax dollars as well.
Right. Yeah. I know Republicans say that needs to be dealt separately. So, that's where the standoff is.
Yeah, what's the chance of going to deal with it separately?
Not at all.
Let's call it what it is, folks. I mean, people should not BS themselves into believing that. I mean, let's be honest about it. If they want to address the issue, they can do it now. If this was a problem that was created over the summertime, they could have addressed it then. This is all political theater. And like I said, if you've been doing this long enough and watched this business long enough, you guys have seen this playbook before.
Hey, let's change topics a little bit. When I heard about the Trump administration's 100% tariffs on foreign-made movies, I thought of you because I know you're supportive of the local movie industry film tax here in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work because tariffing a service of this type is basically applying a tax. So what he's really doing, he's trying to create a tax because a tariff is a type of tax, but it's not a tax in the sense it's been passed by Congress as approved tax, which is why the Constitution says Congress approves tariffs. I'm not sure exactly how this will work because you're basically saying, I want to tax you 100% of your revenues generated overseas. Isn't this the argument that Democrats make regarding foreign corporations generating income overseas and hiding their money in foreign banks? I mean, it's exactly the same kind of thing that's talked about a lot, where multinational, particularly big multinationals, are making a lot of money, but none of the income's taxed in Massachusetts, so they hide the money in foreign accounts. This is a little different because the revenue will come back here, but there's nothing that says that these same film companies that are the big ones, not like a small film company, could just open an offshore account and just hide their money overseas. I'm having a real hard time reconciling how this would work. And it's a tax, not a tariff. So if I'm going to tax you on your revenue, not on the product, the revenue generated, that's a tax. Tariffs generally applied to goods coming in as a surcharge, essentially, by importers to the United States, where upon arrival in the United States, customs check the products on the manifest and proceed to apply the tariffs, which must be paid before releasing goods. If you're paying, are you stopping a movie from coming in that's actually production is finalized inside the United States? Because a lot of the work in the film industry is all over the world. I mean, true, including things like animation that's done, a lot of it's in Korea. But the final assembly of a movie is done mostly, not all of it, but mostly inside the United States. So I'm not sure. I'm very confused how this works because what he's doing is he's applying a tax on revenue.
Why would a company even produce a film that was not going to be profitable because of that tax?
Well, and why would you let the money come on shore?
Right.
I mean, that money's not coming on shore. It's not coming on shore. And given the fact everything's digital, meaning you can move stuff to the cloud, it's no longer the days of moving, film. I'm very perplexed how this will be implemented because this is an IRS issue, not a customs issue. In my mind, anyway, because like I said, it's not like you go to customs checks your digital products coming over via the cloud and then assembled and edited inside the United States.
Right. Yeah.
There are exceptions. Like Lord of the Rings was entirely shot in New Zealand, pretty much in Australia, and all the post-production was done overseas because that's how they did it. And it was shipped over to the US. But we're talking about a film that's over 20 years old, right?
Right.
We're talking about today's modern media, which is pretty much almost shot 100% digital.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But your post-production is all the, hundreds of hours, perhaps, depending on the film regarding retakes, reshoot, errors, etc. And then you have to go through all this material. Then you got to link up the sound properly. And then you may do re-edits before the film is released to the public. Then you have a test screening inside the United States, and then make some decisions and release decisions. Plus, you have the distribution network, which is also in the United States. I don't know what you're thinking. I think people like sitting there thinking, oh, well, all this work should be done in the United States. So this tariff, will make people come back. And I'm like, think about this, people. I mean, it's not a good. It's not good in the conventional sense. It's not like a foreign company made this product and is trying to get it past LA or LA's port to get the country and put like a surcharge which you will pay for eventually. This is a film, and it also doesn't make sense here because the film industry uses distribution systems in the United States, and the distribution system which collects the money. When you buy your ticket at a movie theater, the theater gets a fixed cost of that movie ticket. The rest of it goes to distribution. And then
in this country, yeah.
Yeah, and then the distribution pays the by contract to the producers of the film. And there's like a whole massive contractual chain of who gets paid what off that ticket. Streaming services don't work exactly the same way, where the content on streaming service is paid for by the streaming provider. And then that provider provides the product to the US. So, for example, let's use Squid Games because that's got a lot of news in the past. It's Korean generated, but Netflix is the producer. It's made in Korea. Netflix eventually bought it. They own the copyright and the intellectual property for it. And then they show it in the United States. There's no physical good passing through customs.
Right.
And the revenue Netflix generates is in the United States. And then they generate revenue because Netflix is one of the few true global streaming services. So when they're showing that in Korea, when they did the test run, Korean subscribers paid for it, but they didn't pay for it by individual ticket. They paid for it as a subscription service. It shows the ignorance of what's going on in the Trump administration about an industry that's very complicated in the modern era. He's thinking this is like 1946.
Oh, right. The Hollywood movie lot where, actors are all gathered there and they spend years making films. That doesn't happen anymore. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And again, I'll repeat the statement. We're on our second, well, really a third, but I mean, 2 presidents now, because he, has 2 non-contiguous terms. 2 presidents, again, that it lives outside the zone of modern time. I mean, both Biden and Trump live in a time warp, and they do not reflect us into modern society regarding how the world works now. And I'm very troubled with the fact that we've had 2 consecutive presidents who literally do not know what's going on in the world because they don't know how the world works today.
So will this impact the Massachusetts film industry?
Well, the industry is already really suffering now from increased costs associated, not just labor, but also production work. There is obviously fuel costs have gone up, and the investment has dried up. I've talked to the Boston Business Journal about the fact that streaming services have gone to a tech mentality of making films at all costs, and they paid the price for it because they made a lot of stuff that no one's watching.
Yeah,
it's not worth production, and it's a very different from the movie era when it was just strictly theaters before streaming and just like network television, like 50 years ago it feels like.
Yeah,
it was strictly network television, no cable TV, where
it was 50 years ago, actually.
Yeah, you really had targeted. You had to be very careful how you spend your money.
Yeah.
Today they spend money like water, and they're paying the price for it, and have a lot of wasted money. And as a result, they have to be much more frugal in production these last several years, particularly post-COVID. And it's been very challenging for the industry. In Massachusetts, they had a really good run. I can't name some of the TV shows at New England Studios right now, which I visited, but they've had a very good run. The question is, going to 26, 27, 28, is that revenue going to be there? But it takes like 5 years to find money to create any production. So minimum 5 year delay, minimum on trying to get the money. And sometimes it can take a decade. And then you throw in the screenplays and then you have to find the actors and everything else.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work before you even get into a set. And given how the economy was in 2022, dictates whether people can afford for something in 2027.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And that impacts the cottage industries around the film industry too.
Yeah, everybody from costume designers to coffee shops,
Right.
has that enormous impact on everything from catering to retail stores where to buy stuff to
Yeah.
carpenters, electricians, and so forth.
All of it, hotels, transportation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, people think you wake up, some billionaire of money just wakes up and drops money in a film. It doesn't work that way. It's a compilation of investors who are looking for a return investment on the film. Whether they make their money is another question.
Mm.
But that can take years before. So a lot of the financing for films, minimum 5 years out, unless you find that big like person with too much money in their hands that is really bored.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I read an article the other day that the American economy is being driven by basically 10% of the population, the 10 wealthiest percent.
Yeah, what's actually interesting, the data set showing so-called upper middle class shrinking down quickly. We always talk about the middle class shrinking, but the upper middle class is also now shrinking really quickly, not necessarily just because of salary reductions or salary stagnation, which is
Yeah.
really what's going to happen soon. It's also the cost of living is rising at a pace where their salaries can't keep up. So, if you really look at not just say how much people make, but how much people need to spend on basic cost of living, especially in this state, the upper middle income folks that maybe you consider $500,000 upper income. But I mean, over time, if their salary doesn't move much, and costs keep going up, but you're getting pinched, well, they're getting pinched too. And eventually, they're no longer upper middle income because the cost of them doing whatever they need to do to survive, day-to-day services will go down. And we saw this happen in the '08 financial crisis. The '08 financial crisis, went for 5 years essentially, and a lot of folks, who were upper middle income, not have any income.
Hmm.
And I always remember the story about Silicon Valley homeless shelter. We had probably the most highest educated people that lost their jobs
Oh,
in a homeless shelter in Silicon Valley, which they never had needed before. So
interesting. Oh, because they were overextended, basically.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it does happen. You could find yourself in a job, executive job, getting paid like $500,000 or something, and then tomorrow morning you're gone.
Hmm. Yeah. And and you can't adjust that quickly.
And you may be irrelevant.
Right. Right.
You find yourself suddenly in a sector which no one cares about you anymore, and you may be well educated and well experienced, but no one needs you for the moment.
Then that's a reset. You have to start all over again, basically.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
tough choices have to be made because if you're from a certain industry, you know what the market looks like, then you're probably aware that you're probably unhireable for a set period of time. You have to make some hard decisions.
And it's harder the older you get, too.
They tend to knock off those first. Have you noticed?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They want to knock off the, older folks they don't want to pay any longer and try to find someone that would take less money for the same work.
I keep reading about this so-called K-shaped economy, which I'm still not quite clear as to what that is, but it's basically some folks advancing very well, some folks decreasing extremely quick, and the rest of us holding line.
Yeah, that's a K, right? The K
Yeah.
straight counts holding the line. People doing well is the K side going up, and people doing poorly is the K side going down. And it's also disconnected by the stock market. So the stock market goes up, but a lot of people's after you pay for life, you're really not making any money anymore. It's already stagnated. So that means your salary and inflation don't sync. So you're losing money. And that means your underlying going down. So like today's consumer confidence report was lower than expected. But job openings, the JOLTS, were a little higher than expected. It's very confusing. Is that a good or bad sign? Because that means that the rotation isn't very high. It's very confusing, the job data right now. Let's ignore the whole revision stuff because it doesn't sync up. But you have growth GDP driven by consumer spending quarter 2, but consumers aren't very confident. And generally, when consumer confidence is down, they don't spend. But that's not what's
Right.
going on.
Right. Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy that's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's reflective of that kind of K shape where people don't have a lot of confidence they're on downward slope with a K,
Mhm.
but the rest of the economy is upward slope, reflecting GDP revision numbers are higher than expected. So, but that's quarter two, by the way. Quarter two is ends in June. We're in quarter three now. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's all kinds of like moving targets, and it's hard to predict what's happening. And
Yeah,
like a lot of these tariff deals didn't are not coming to effect to now, and some are pending like EU approval.
right.
And then you got these rando tariffs, for lack of a better term, like steel and lumber making an appearance out of the blue, but you don't factor those in back in April. And what does that mean going to December? And construction doesn't happen in the northern part of the country during the wintertime, really, in terms of heavy construction. I mean, things are happening, but I mean, most of the big construction during warm months. So what does it mean you're going to buy steel in January? Is it going to be a different price putting that order in August? It's not like you just have steel beams sitting around all winter. I mean, I have no idea how this is going to work because
Yeah,
it's so many unpredictable moving parts. Well, the Trump administration is trying to spin it as, well, nothing really bad's happened, but things keep changing, but they won't talk about trying to account for future tariff impact because they keep changing, because they themselves, the talking heads on behalf of administration, don't even know when it's going to happen or what it's going to look like. So for them, it's impossible for them to say, well, yeah, we're going to expect these future tariffs initiating this date. They can't make that statement because this is very almost like on the spur, whimsical kind of decision making.
right. Yeah, yeah. And it depends on who you ask too, in their own life situation.
Agreed. And you and I have different standards of living in terms of like what we need to do and pay for. For example, I mean, I have a lot of costs associated with my mother. And some people don't. Some people, I know I have friends who have a lot of kids and their cost is different from a guy who don't have children. So everyone's in a different financial situation. I am very understanding of that. And it's going to be, I don't know. I just don't know how it's going to go because, like I said, the Trump administration talking heads um, only know what they're talking about now, but they can't predict what the president's going to do. And the data sets change based on what he does.
Right.
It's everything they say. Again, it's all looking backwards in time, like everything else. But they can't talk forward in time because they have no plan on forward implementation, so they can't make educated projections.
Right. And a government shutdown is going to also shut down those numbers, those statistics, those reports to base that information on.
Yeah, because they're not working,
Right.
and there's no reason to report. And then if is a long shutdown, I don't know if it's going to be a long shut. There is also potential that you may not see the impacts to down the road. Everything is not,
Much like the tariffs. Yeah.
yeah, nothing's instantaneous. Everything takes time for it to unfold, as I like to say, particularly in public policy.
Oh boy. What's going on in the district, Tacky? Let's talk about something else.
Um, I went to Church of the Presidents, First United Parish in Quincy Center, because the tombs of the presidents were open, and I was there. It was there.
Oh, for Heritage Days? Yeah.
Yeah, I figured I haven't been in there as a tourist in a long time, so I just kind of did the walk around,
Oh, nice.
took pictures of stuff I've had like 100 pictures off. I don't know why I keep doing it, but I always do it, and did things like that on Saturday. Um,
Nice, nice. I love to take people to the places around the city that have never been before because it forces you to look at it through their eyes and you get a whole new appreciation, I think.
yeah, some stuff you haven't done since you were a kid or for
Right.
many years. It's nice. It's like the Dorothy Quincy house. I loved the Adams Mansion for many years. I like, I think I was last in there before COVID. I think it was 2018, I think.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I took family through there. Um, yeah, it's stuff I really need to do that I really enjoy locally that I don't do regularly. Not like I want to go every week, but every so often it's something to do that I
Yeah.
want to check in on. Like we talked about the Constitution the other day. I mean, in
Mhm.
Charleston, I haven't been in there since my 20s. Again, it's also don't expect massive changes. It is a ship. But there's something special about places like the Adam Mansion, the Forbes House in Milton, other similar locales where you're really walking backwards in time, how people really used to live.
Yeah, it's authentic. It's genuine because this is where it happened.
Yeah, the Good Neighbor HouseNet Good Neighbor Reward Dinner is back. They're doing it October 25th. Um, the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Navy. They're celebrating it, I believe, at Marina Bay on October 10th. There's Oktoberfest going
Yes.
on in Montclair Walson Neighborhood Association. I want to say it's also October 25th. I'm trying to remember. Uh,
They have a big pumpkin spice festival, I know. That's
yep.
yep.
Um, I know that the Woodward School Girls, I can't make this one, but the Woodward School is having their annual gala, I think this coming Saturday. Um, what else is going on? I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'm not looking at my calendar.
There's a food truck festival downtown that's coming up. Gosh, there's a couple of lectures that are happening. I think author Dennis Lehane's coming to the city soon. So there's a lot happening.
There's a lot happening locally. Not obviously the Quincy 400 continues, but obviously there's a lot of local fundraising events happening. I might as well plug local charities right now. If you actually have a couple extra pennies to spare, whether for a neighborhood group or a food pantry or domestic violence shelter or any services locally, and you have a couple of pennies to spare. I mean, they're not looking for $10,000 donations, but even can spare like a small amount of money.
Mhm.
We're very grateful for our local organizations, particularly moving into a very uncertain time on regarding federal support, but also higher need for services as we go forward. We've heard from Father Bills. Contrary to what you're hearing, the migrant issue is indeed pretty much over. The capacities in our emergency shelter system and our local shelters is all local folks. And they're at capacity before the winter months. We've been told that Father Bills has already hit winter capacity.
That's not good here in the end of September.
No, it's not. No, it's not because, obviously the seasonal workers ending and the seasonal workers in the wintertime, but there's a talk about not hiring as many seasonal workers. And we talked about earlier about the impact of the economy on folks on so many different levels. But the emergency shelter program is going to be very heavily burdened, expect this coming wintertime. If they already hit winter numbers now locally, it's going to compound. And
Yeah.
and a lot of these, not a lot, but some, things like Section 8 programs is a federal program.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's going
What
to be,
happened to all the migrants, Jackie, that were in the state? Did they find housing for them?
yeah, they keep moving along. I mean, they either found their own housing, they found their own jobs, or they just moved along. The job market was so sparse. They needed people working all levels of everything.
Yeah.
And people just started doing what they came here to do. They want to find work in a stable environment for their families.
Okay. Okay.
And
The
some,
emergency was just the influx all at once.
and some of it left the state.
Yeah.
And honestly, people went under the radar, but the administration also deported a large number of Haitians.
Interesting.
No idea where they got deported to,
Right.
is the other problem. We're not deported back to home country. They're just dumping them on somebody else's country, which doesn't make sense because you generally want to go back to a place that, I don't know, you speak the same language.
Hmm.
And you actually know what the culture is like, better, good or bad. But I mean, there was a large number of deportations as well. So it's a combination of factors. And like I said, I still believe that even during the migrant crisis, at least half of the emergency shelters were still local residents. They weren't all
Mhm.
immigrants. And I think that's kind of the lack of messaging that the Haley administration did a very poor job on, because my sources all told me that it's not 100% migrants, about half of them were local residents, but the Haley administration's inability to communicate that is real problematic to give us a better view of what's happening in our local economy.
Yeah, that's important. It really is. Absolutely. So that's good that we mentioned it here at least.
Yeah, and I am bracing for impact in constituent services. So, like I said, if you guys have local organizations that you really support and love and work they do, and you got a couple of pennies, and I know you're pinched, and I'm pinched, but if you got a couple of pennies to spare, I'm sure every local organization would love to have even a little bit of money from anyone to help them out.
Oh, that reminds me, Interface Social Services, this coming Saturday, their thrift shop's having a big closet sale, so check them out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. They're on Adams Street.
Mhm.
Some of you are old enough remember the South Shore Cerebral Palsy.
Yes.
Those old enough remember that location. Yeah, definitely do things like that. And obviously, I encourage people to check the Quincy Sun. And there's no shortage of social media forums
Right. They're all on them now. Absolutely. Yeah.
on them now. So you can always check at this, some kind of local fundraiser going on for those groups. So I wish I had a better way to put it. We'll do as much as we can at our level, the state level, but at the same time, these are your groups at home that support people that are your neighbors.
To that end, here's what we let folks know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370 is the number at the office. You got an emergency like unemployment, please definitely call us. Get a message us this way. Obviously, you know that I did check my email before coming on, so I do see them. And also get hit by another 50 pieces of testimony before we got on this call, which gonna have to read.
Oh, so I distracted you for an hour. That's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of testimony coming in. Committee chair, consequences of a committee chair. Obviously, tacky.chan@mahouse.gov, TACKEY .CHAN@mahouse.gov. We have a State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook. We have an Instagram that goes with that now. We have tackychan.org. People actually do use that contact page to reach out to us. We do have at TackyChan at X, but we're stopping using that. So please feel free to unsubscribe from that. Obviously, we have melegislature.gov, melegislature.gov. You do not need me to tell you what's going on with a bill. It's all online. And when it's on the internet, I find out at the same time when you find out, when the clerk processes the paperwork, as well as our sessions and our hearings. You can watch me. Well, actually, we may not hear this by tomorrow, but obviously, recording for my public hearing tomorrow is at on October 1st, at 10 a.m. There'll be a recording available on my own public hearing. And then, of course, me and Joey here try to get to you every month, maybe 2 or 3 times, depending on our scheduling. And QATV at QATV.org, QATV at QATV.org, if you want to drop Joe a line and things you want to ask about or commentary. Actually, I ran across 2 people last week that actually did watch us.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that.
We thank you very much for tuning in. And Joe would love to hear people that check in on the shows and the people we interview and the thoughts of how it went.
Definitely. Always like to hear from folks for sure. And next time we talk, it'll be October.
It will be. And I'll be actually in to see Mark regarding what's his was it the what Mark Crosby show
State View.
State View. Yeah. I'll be in late October to do.
Oh, Tacky in person. Okay.
I'll be in studio with Mark at the end of towards the end of October. So.
All right. Well, I'll be sure and wander out and see you in person.
I know I'd be more dressed up.
Thanks a lot, Tacky.